Hi, hi everyone, and welcome to another session with me, Taryn. I'm an eating behavior coach from Mind Shift Me. And what I'm going to talk about today is sabotaging thoughts that are hurting your weight. Okay, or your health. So when it comes to successful or sustainable healthy weight, often we're our own worst enemy because of the mindset that we have or the thoughts that we have in our head. So many of our thoughts are automatic. They're called automatic thoughts. And what they do is they just pop into our brain all the time. We don't even recognize them most of the time unless we consciously think about them because they happen so often. And sometimes what these thoughts can be is not based in reality, right? So a lot of our thoughts are based in our perceptions or our experiences in the world. And they color the way that we see the world or the way that we interact with other people or how we think about things. And often, like I say, this can be not based in reality. And when this happens, this is called cognitive distortion, which is a fancy way of saying that your thinking is a little out of whack. And this can often happen when it comes to the way that we think about our bodies or our health or our weight or our eating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few common cognitive distortion thinking patterns, see if any of them resonate with you. But before we even get in there, what I want to do is just set the scene. So see if this sounds familiar. You're out for lunch with a girlfriend and she suggests, oh, let's have a dessert. And you know when you're really craving a dessert, so you go for it and you have that, chocolate souffle and it's delicious. And as soon as you've finished, all these thoughts start to come into your head of like, oh, I'm so bad. I shouldn't have done that. I'm such a complete failure on my diet. I'm going to put on all this weight. I just, I can't seem to stick to anything. I'm so useless. I shouldn't have eaten that, right? So this is all the guilt and the shame and all these horrible thoughts are flooding into your head. Now, these are often cognitive distortion thoughts or automatic thoughts. And they can have a huge impact on your behavior and your attitude and negatively affect your health and your weight. So the idea is to really start to acknowledge your cognitive thoughts, right, distorted thoughts, and then start to challenge them so that you start to think, is this reality? Is this actually happening? So let's get into a few of them now. So the first one is black and white thinking. So if you think like this, you typically think in terms of either or, right? So it's either good or it's bad. It's right or it's wrong. It's all or nothing. And what happens is when you have black and white thinking, you fail to acknowledge that there's a whole shade of gray in the middle, right? And this is where life happens, in the middle. We're not perfect. We're not terrible. We're not amazing. We kind of sit in the middle. Sometimes we're great. Sometimes we're not. Most of the time we're in the middle. And when you only see two possible sides of the outcome, you ignore this middle ground, which is usually the more reasonable ground, right? So here's an example of black and white thinking. I had a piece of cake and now I am a complete failure on my diet. And I might as well go and binge eat for the rest of the day because now I've completely blown my diet. Now, this isn't necessarily true, right? This is black or white. I'm good or I'm bad. I'm either starving myself on a diet or I'm binge eating, right? They're extremes. And the better reality is, yeah, maybe I had a piece of cake or I overate at that last meal and that, I didn't feel great about it. But you know what? At least I recognize that I've overeaten and, or I had a piece of cake where I actually didn't feel like it. I'm recognizing that. And what I'm going to do at the next meal if I'm stuffed right now is I'm going to probably try and eat a little less or at least be mindful of what I'm eating. So start to, listen to when I'm really getting full rather than just overeat. And this is just a nugget of information that I have now learned. So this is this gray area in between of going, you know what, sometimes I'm not going to be perfect all the time, but let's learn from that and let's grow from that rather than, let's just binge eat now because everything's out the window. Right? That's black and white thinking. The next one is overgeneralization. So now this is the big sister of black and white thinking. This is where you see one negative event as an ongoing pattern of failure, and you blow it out of proportion. So you use words like always, never, every, all, right? So an example would be, oh, I didn't order that healthy salad, and I'm always doing that in restaurants. I just can't ever trust myself to eat out with friends anymore. I'll never get to my goal weight, right? So this is taking one example, one situation where your diet says you should eat a salad, right? You're supposed to eat a salad, and you didn't. And so you blow it all out of proportion, say, I'm a complete failure in my entire healthy eating pattern because of this one meal that I had, that I didn't eat what I was supposed to eat, which is a whole other story that we can't get into today. So again, this is taking it out, this blowing everything out of proportion. And, you know, you can start to recognize some of these thought patterns in other areas of your life. It's not just your eating or your diet or your health or your weight or your body. You know, you can see them in your career and your relationships as well. So if you're one of these people who kind of blows things out of proportion, you really need to start to go, oh, hang on a minute. Does this mean my entire thing is useless or a waste of time, or I'm a complete failure? No, it's just one incident. And again, we go back to going, okay, well, how could I do that differently? Was it really that bad? You know, wow, crikey, I had a pasta instead of a salad. Is that, you know, life-changing? No, we learn, we acknowledge. Right, so number 3 is personalization. So this is when you take things really personally. You blame your things that happen or things that other people do, and you blame them on yourself. So this type of thinking causes a lot of guilt and blame and frustration. And what you do is you take on the world, really. You blame yourself for external circumstances that actually are out of your control. So one example, hi, good evening. It's morning for me, or lunchtime for me, but hey, how you doing? So if you've got any questions new, then just ask me as I'm rattling on about different types of cognitive thinking. So the third one we're going to talk about is personalization. So this is when you take things personally, right? So an example of this would be, Sarah must be so annoyed with me because she offered me a cupcake that she'd baked from scratch, and I was so full. I just wasn't in the mood for it, and I said no. And I'm such a bad friend because that must have really upset her. So this is where we take on all the guilt and the blame, and what happens is we don't put our boundaries in place. So what we do is we put everybody else's needs ahead of our own. And this is where a lot of peer pressure can come into, particularly when we're talking about you're eating. So everybody else is having something to eat. You're not particularly hungry, but you feel bad for not eating, so you go along with it. Or, you know, in this case with Sarah and her cupcake, you feel bad for not eating the cupcake, even though what would be right for you is to honor your fullness and your hunger and go, you know what, I actually don't feel like that. So people with personalization thinking, these are the type of people that actually need these toolkits of phrases that they can carry around for these kind of situations. So, for example, in the Sarah situation with her cupcake, somebody offers you something they've baked, and you're really full, or dessert, and you're actually totally full. You don't feel like it. Then this is the time to actually go, you know what? Here's a tool of a phrase that you can keep in your pocket. You know what, Sarah, thank you so much. These look amazing. You're such a great baker. I mean, I love this. But you know, I'm so full right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it home, and I'm going to eat it tomorrow when I'm more hungry, so I can really, really savor it and enjoy it properly, because, you know, that's what it deserves. So these kind of phrases where what you're doing is you're acknowledging the person, you're being grateful, but you're also putting your boundaries in place. It doesn't mean that you always have to succumb to somebody else. But the first key is recognizing when you're doing these kind of things. All right, so number 4 is maximizing or minimizing. So this is when you either amplify your failures or you downplay your successes. And life comes with its ups and downs, right? You need to enjoy your triumphs, however small they are, and you need to accept that, yep, sometimes you're going to fail. Hi, Raz. Welcome to the party. Give me a wave. If you've got any questions, just give me a shout. So what we're talking about right now is maximizing and minimizing, which is where you either go amplify your failures or you downplay your successes. Now, life is always going to have its ups and downs. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's a terrible, horrible person who's evil. Everybody's got the good and the bad in them, right? You're doing your best. And so we have to acknowledge our little successes that we have along the way. And we have to also acknowledge that sometimes we're just not going to get it right, or we're going to fail. So we need to give ourselves a little bit of credit and ease up on the judgment. So an example of somebody who is maximizing would be, I just know I'm going to weigh more because I ate so much at brunch, right? This is taking that brunch, maybe you ate a little too much and going, oh no, the world's going to fall apart. This is terrible. I'm such a useless failure, etc., etc. And a way of minimizing, where you downplaying your successes, is something like, I only swam 10 lengths today and I should have done 20, right? And this is, again, at least you got out there and you went swimming. This is good. And you've got to acknowledge that sometimes your body's just going to be more tired than others. A prime example happened to me this morning. I went for a run, and I'm not a runner, but because we're in lockdown here in the Caribbean, in Cayman Islands, so that's I can't go to my usual classes or do my usual things, so I've started running. And I'm not very good, but I'm getting out there and I'm doing my thing. And today it was hot as hell. It was 32 degrees or about 89 Fahrenheit. It was brutal. And I struggled today in the heat. And I got to a point of going, this is really unpleasant. I'm really dehydrated. I'm overheating. I've done 3/4 of what I was going to do. But, my body is screaming at me now. And so I have to honor that. So I came back early, and I could beat myself up for it. Or I could go, you know what? You honored yourself. You didn't kill yourself until you felt like, oh, I never want to do that again. You did as much as you could in the heat, and that was good enough. You got out. You didn't sleep in. You got your trainers on and you went for a run. And this is the difference between going, oh, you're such a failure because you didn't do the entire route, versus, you know what? You're smart because you honored your body in this heat, and that was good enough. Now, this is not to say that you need to make excuses for not doing things and going, oh, well, I can't do that. This is not about that at all. This is just acknowledging where your body is at any given point. Right, so that's maximizing and minimizing. Now let's move on to my biggest bugbear, which is the last one I'm going to talk about, is should statements. And the reason should is like a swear word in my world. And the reason is because I recognize myself in these. This is how I used to talk to myself. I used to use these statements a lot. So things like should, ought to, must are always related to cognitive distortions. Right? This type of thinking can cause feelings of guilt and of shame, and they are very much tied into dieting. So we use a lot of these words when we're dieting, of going, oh, I should eat a salad. I must go and exercise, even though I'm exhausted. And they set these ideal standards up here, and when we fail on them, what happens is that we feel really guilty, really ashamed, like a complete failure. But we can't maintain that level, right, of shoulds, could have, would have, should have. Sometimes we can, but this is why you always fall off a diet, because these levels are so high up here, and what happens is that you can't maintain that. So you tend to, over time, fall off it because life gets in the way. Remember those little gray areas of life, and you can't be perfect all the time. And when you're thinking like this, where you should live up to that ideal all the time, this is when all this guilt and shame and frustration comes in. So it's things like, I should go to the gym tonight, even though I'm exhausted. Or I must have a salad, even though I'm starving and I really feel like I need some carbs. right? These kind of sayings, what they do is they shut down you listening to your body, and the diet rules and regulations kind of take over of what this your ideal person should be, right? Who you should be. And it's rubbish, right? It doesn't work. It makes you feel bad about yourself. And what we need to do is start to go, hang on a minute. Life goes in ebbs and flows. And we need to recognize that as long as I'm listening to my body and I'm honoring when I'm hungry, what I'm craving, or when I'm full of energy and I should go and get some exercise, versus when I'm exhausted and I can't even put one foot in front of the other. That is smart, because that is listening to your body and honoring your body. And in the long run, that's going to lead you to a healthier lifestyle, rather than going, I should do this, I shouldn't do that, etc., etc. All right, so now what you need to do, if you can recognize your thinking patterns in some of these things, what you need to do is start to acknowledge when these things happen. What's the trigger for these kind of thoughts? So the first step is start to listen to what you're saying to yourself in your head, what you say to other people, like how do you speak? Do you use a lot of these kind of words? And then you start to go, okay, well, what made me think like that? What was that trigger that made me think like that? And then the next step is to challenge that thought, to go, well, is there an alternative reality to this? Is there an alternative, thought that I could have about this? Whether you believe it or not, just challenge yourself, just question it. So let's use an example. I put on a new dress that I hadn't worn for a while, and I'm frustrated now because he thinks that I look fat, and I feel ashamed and I'm humiliated. So what I'm doing is I'm recognizing that I have this immediate thought of going, he thinks that I'm fat, and then following on from that is like, well, how did I feel about that? Well, I feel ashamed and humiliated and angry, right? Then I start to think, okay, well, why did I think that? Does he really think that I'm fat? And then you think, okay, let's challenge that. Has he ever said that before? No, he never seems to care about my weight. Okay, so then why would I think that? What was the trigger for that? I'm wearing a dress that I know is too tight for me, and it makes me feel uncomfortable, or a pair of jeans or whatever it is. And it makes me feel self-conscious because I'm uncomfortable, because I know it's too tight for me. So that's what's made me self-conscious and oversensitive, unnecessarily oversensitive to something that he may have said that I have now interpreted as he thinks I'm fat. Because in my head, in the back of my head, I'm going, I know I've put on weight because my clothes are a little too tight, right? So this is the alternative route that we go. I'm like, okay, well, what can I do about that? Well, I can stop wearing clothes that make me feel bad about myself, right? I can stop wearing clothes that are too tight for me right now. That way, I'm going to feel more body confident, and I'm not going to blame my partner for thinking that I'm fat when I don't, when he doesn't, should I say. And so I'm going to stop wearing clothes that make me feel insecure, and recognize that I've got somebody who loves me for me, regardless of my weight. So this is just one little example of how you can start to recognize these crazy thoughts that we have. And we all have them, so don't bash yourself about that. We all have them. But recognize your crazy thoughts, and then start to challenge them and go, is there an alternative here? What's really going on? What triggered that thinking? And is that reality? So this takes time. It takes a lot of practice, and it takes time. But the more often you get, you start to acknowledge these thoughts, the more you can start to challenge them and really think, is that true? Is that real? Or is that just me being a little crazy in my head? And especially, when we're stuck on a diet and we've been dieting for so long, then what happens is that we get sucked into this because the diet tells us we should do this, we shouldn't do this. We have a whole bunch of rules, and then we have this like food police and the diet nag in our head going, this is what you must do, this is how you should act, this is what you should be eating, this is what you mustn't eat, etc. And this kind of perpetuates our kind of cognitive distortion. So I want you to try and start to really think about what are these kind of thoughts that are sabotaging your health. Now, If you want a lot more detail, we dive a lot deeper into all of this stuff, as well as emotional eating and how to cope with your emotions without reaching for a tub of ice cream to soothe yourself, in my online course. And it's a 3-month course. What it is it's got some video modules that you can work through at your own pace. Plus, it has a whole load of worksheets that are really practical that you can use to figure out your own personal journey. And then there's a private Facebook group where I'm hanging out, so you can ask me questions anytime, and we can coach through all your sort of obstacles and challenges as you navigate on this route to food freedom. So the course is called Food Freedom, and you can find it on my website. It's called mindshiftme.com on the online courses page. I will put the link in this live video as well, so you can have a look at that if that's of interest to you. And if you join in April, you'll get a bonus one-on-one personalized coaching session with me, so we can really dig deep and sort of strategize what are your challenges, what are your obstacles, and strategize a plan for you, which will just kind of add that extra layer over this course for you. So check it out. And in the meantime, join my Facebook group where I'm also hanging out, sharing lots of nuggets. It's called Mind Shift Me Community. So come along, guys, and join me, and start a conversation with like-minded people just like you, who are also struggling to kind of get a handle on healthy eating without dieting. So have a great day. Thanks for joining me, everyone, and I'll chat to you soon.